Welcome to Night Whisper. Night Whisper brings you the darkest tales from the shadows. Join our community. Subscribe, leave a like, and prepare yourself for stories that will haunt your dreams. At 3 in the morning in an empty motel room, you feel true fear when the bloodstains leading to the closet in the room suddenly stop. You feel it when you talk to a girl who drowned 63 years ago. You feel it when you see the teeth the town's dark, fallen night has bared at you. I need to tell you about something that happened here. Something that keeps me awake at night even now, years later. Because what I experienced doesn't have a rational explanation, and that terrifies me more than any criminal I've ever faced. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm a cop in a small mountain town in northern Colorado, population just under 8,000. The kind of place where everybody knows everybody, where the biggest crimes are usually drunk driving or bar fights, the kind of place where nothing truly horrible is supposed to happen. I've been with the department for 13 years. My partner Leo has been doing this for 20. Together, we've handled just about everything this quiet town can throw at us. Domestic disputes, petty theft, the occasional meth lab in the backwoods, standard small-town America. But there are 2 cases that don't fit that pattern. 2 cases that make my hands shake when I remember them. 2 cases connected in ways I'm still trying to understand. And both of them involve things that hide in dark spaces. Part 1. Martha. The first case started on a Tuesday afternoon 3 weeks into March. Leo and I were on routine patrol when dispatcher Karen's voice crackled over the radio. Unit 3, we've got Martha Kellerman calling in again. Says there's someone in her house. Leo glanced at me and sighed. What else is new? Martha was a regular, a 72-year-old widow who lived alone in a weathered 2-story house about 3 miles outside town, surrounded by dense pine forest. Her husband Bill had died 7 years back from a stroke, and since then, Martha had become what we politely called eccentric. She'd call maybe once every couple months, prowlers in her yard that turned out to be deer, strange lights in the sky that were clearly military aircraft from the base 60 miles west, noises in her attic that were always raccoons. We never minded checking on her. Martha was lonely and scared, and making her feel safe was part of the job. Copy that, Karen, I said into the radio. We're en route. The drive took us through some of the most beautiful country in Colorado. Towering pines, mountain peaks in the distance, crystal clear air. But as we got closer to Martha's property, I felt something shift. The trees seemed darker somehow, more oppressive. The shadows between the trunks looked deeper than they should have. You feel that? Leo asked quietly. Feel what? Like something's watching us. I did feel it. A prickling on the back of my neck, like invisible eyes tracking our movement. I'd felt it before on calls to Martha's place, but never this intense. When we pulled up to the house, we knew immediately something was wrong. Martha was waiting on the porch, but she looked nothing like the woman we'd seen just 2 months ago. She'd lost at least 20 pounds. Her face was gaunt, almost skeletal, with dark circles under her eyes that looked like bruises. Her gray hair hung unwashed and tangled around her face. Her clothes were dirty and hung off her frame. But it was her eyes that really disturbed me. Wide and glassy, staring at nothing. Or maybe it's something we couldn't see. Her whole body trembled like she was freezing, despite the mild spring weather. Jesus Christ, Leo whispered as we got out of the cruiser. Mrs. Kellerman? I called out, approaching slowly. Martha, it's Deputy Harrison and Deputy Cruz. Are you all right? She looked at us, but it was like she was looking through us. It's in there, she said in a flat, dead voice. It's hiding. It knows you're here, so it's hiding. But when you leave, it'll come back for me. Leo and I exchanged a worried glance. This wasn't the Martha we knew. The Martha we knew got flustered and apologetic. This woman looked like she'd survived a war. Why don't you wait out here, ma'am? Leo said gently. We'll go take a look. We drew our weapons and entered the house. What we found inside made my stomach turn. The place was a disaster. Martha had always kept her house spotless, but now dirty dishes were piled in the sink, trash littered the floors, and the whole place smelled stale and unwashed. Her pillow and blankets were on the living room couch, like she'd been sleeping there. Half-empty coffee cups and food containers cluttered the coffee table next to a Bible and rosary. But that wasn't the worst part. Every mirror in the house had been shattered. The bathroom mirror, the bedroom mirror, the decorative mirror in the hallway, all of them broken, glass scattered on the floors. And every closet door had been nailed shut. Dozens of nails hammered through the wood into the frames, crude and desperate. The closet door in the upstairs hallway had a massive hole blasted through it, splintered wood and scattered buckshot pitting the wall beyond. "Shotgun," Leo said quietly, examining the damage. We found the gun downstairs, leaning in a corner, an old 12-gauge. Leo broke it open and found 2 spent shells inside. He sniffed one. "Fired recently." My heart was pounding now. What the hell had happened in this house? We finished our sweep and found no intruders, no signs of forced entry, no explanation for any of it. When we came back outside, Martha was still on the porch, trembling. "Mrs. Kellerman," I said carefully, "there's no one in your house, but we need you to tell us what happened here." For a long moment she didn't answer. Then she looked at me, and for the first time her eyes truly focused. "It started 3 weeks ago," she whispered. "That's when I first heard the scratching." What she told us next made my blood run cold. It had begun with soft, scratching sounds coming from inside her bedroom closet at night, always around midnight. At first she thought it was an animal, except the scratching came from too high up to be a mouse, 6 feet off the ground, like someone tall was scraping their fingernails against the inside of the door. She'd open the closet during the day and find nothing, but she'd see the marks, deep gouges in the wood, fresh ones appearing each night. Then it started talking to her. "Using Bill's voice," Martha said, her voice shaking. "My dead husband's voice, calling my name from inside the closet, asking me to open the door, saying he'd come back from heaven to take me with him." She'd almost opened it. Almost. But something about the voice was wrong. The words were Bill's, but the cadence wasn't. Like someone wearing a mask of her husband's voice. When she refused to open the door, the voice had changed, gotten angry, started cursing at her, saying vile things Bill would never have said. The pounding started then. Violent, frenzied pounding from inside the closet. Not just her bedroom closet, all of them. Every closet in the house, all pounding at once, all with that same horrible voice. That's when she'd nailed them shut. "And the mirrors?" Leo asked gently. Martha's face went even paler. "I saw it, in my bathroom mirror, standing behind me. Except it wasn't behind me, it was in the mirror itself. Black robes, a hood, and underneath," she shuddered violently, "a skull, a grinning skull with horns and red eyes. It reached out of the mirror with clawed hands, tried to grab me." She'd smashed every mirror after that. "This morning the pounding got so violent I thought the doors would break," she continued. "The nails weren't holding, so I got Bill's shotgun and fired it through the closet door just to scare it." "Did it work?" I asked. "For a minute. Then I heard it laugh. I looked through the hole the shotgun made and saw those red eyes staring back at me. And it said one word." Tears ran down her face. "Tonight." Leo and I stood there in shocked silence. Obviously the woman was having some kind of breakdown. But looking at her, at the absolute terror in her eyes, at what she'd done to her own home, this wasn't just paranoia. This was someone who genuinely believed she was going to die. "Mrs. Kellerman," I said, making a decision, "you're coming with us. We're putting you up in a motel in town. You're not staying in this house another night." The relief on her face was immediate and overwhelming. She actually started crying. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." We drove her into town, and checked her into the Pinecrest Motel. A cheap place, but clean. Martha seemed better almost immediately, just being away from that house. She smiled at us, said she was going to take a hot shower, and sleep for the first time in weeks. "We'll come check on you tomorrow," I told her. "Get some rest." Leo and I left her there around 4 in the afternoon, both of us troubled but relieved she was safe. We drove back to the station in silence. Tomorrow we'd call social services, get Martha the help she clearly needed. Maybe find a facility that could care for her properly. Tomorrow. Except at 3:15 the next morning my phone rang. It was Chief Briggs. "Get to the Pinecrest, now!" I threw on my uniform and drove to the motel with lights flashing. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw Chief Briggs, Leo, and Deputy Martinez standing outside room 12. Martha's room. Crime scene tape was already up. "What happened?" I asked, my stomach sinking. Chief Briggs looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Fear. "She's gone," he said. "What do you mean, gone? Come see for yourself." He led me into the room and I stopped dead. Blood. Splattered on the walls, on the floor, on the ceiling, not pools of it, but spray patterns. The bedsheets had been ripped completely off the mattress and lay tangled on the floor, like someone had desperately tried to hold on to them as they were dragged away. And on the carpet, leading from the bed across the room, were 10 thin trails of blood. Finger trails. Like someone had been clawing at the carpet as they were pulled, their fingernails scraping hard enough to leave bloody tracks. I followed the trails with my eyes. They led across the floor, past the bathroom, straight to the closet. The closet door stood open. The closet itself was completely empty. "The door was locked from the inside," Chief Briggs said quietly. "Windows, too. Martinez and I had to break in when other guests reported screaming around 2 a.m. This is what we found." "But where's Martha?" I asked, though I already knew there was no good answer. "We don't know. We've searched everything. The entire motel, the parking lot, the woods out back. She's just gone." I walked to the closet and looked inside. Empty hangers, bare walls, nothing to indicate where a 72-year-old woman could have disappeared to, except those bloody finger trails ending right at the threshold. Not continuing into the closet, just stopping, like Martha had been pulled through an invisible barrier and ceased to exist. I bent down and examined them closer. The blood was still tacky, not quite dry. 10 trails, 10 fingers desperately clawing for any purchase as their owner was dragged toward that dark space. "We need the state police," Leo said from behind me. Chief Briggs nodded grimly. "Already called them." But I wasn't listening. I was staring at those finger trails, thinking about what Martha had told us, about the thing in her house, about the voice, about the red eyes in the darkness, about the single word it had said to her. Tonight. The state police investigated for weeks. They brought in dogs, searched the woods for miles, dredged the nearby creek. Nothing. The official conclusion was that Martha had suffered a psychotic break and somehow escaped the room, possibly through the window, and wandered into the wilderness. Never mind that the window was locked from inside. Never mind that the blood trails led to the closet, not the window. Never mind that there was no logical explanation for any of it. I wanted to believe their conclusion. God, I wanted to. But I couldn't stop thinking about those empty closets in Martha's house, about the scratching, about something that could reach through dark spaces and pull people into whatever existed on the other side. We never found Martha Kellerman. And 3 nights later, something happened that made it impossible for me to forget. Part 2, June. It was a quiet Friday night. Leo and I were working the graveyard shift, mostly just driving around, making sure everything was peaceful. Around 11 p.m., we stopped at the station to grab coffee and do paperwork. Chief Briggs was there, working late in his office. The 3 of us were alone in the building. And then suddenly, she was there. I don't mean she walked in. I mean, one moment the station was empty except for us, and the next moment she was standing in the middle of the room, just appearing out of nowhere. She was young, maybe 17 or 18, thin and pale, with long dark hair plastered to her face and neck, and she was soaking wet, absolutely drenched, water pooling on the floor around her feet like she'd just climbed out of a lake. Her dress was old-fashioned, not vintage style, but genuinely old, the kind of thing you'd see in photographs from the 1960s. Same with her shoes, those little flat shoes with ankle straps that girls used to wear decades ago. She was shaking, her eyes wide and frantic. "Please," she gasped, "you have to help me. Someone tried to kill me." For a moment we just stared, too shocked to respond. Leo recovered first. "Miss, what happened? Are you all right?" She wrapped her arms around herself. "A man. He pretended to be a priest, asked me to help him get his wallet from under his car seat. When I bent down, he hit me with his crutch. Then he threw me in his trunk." Chief Briggs stood up from his desk. "Sit down, miss. Leo, get her a blanket. We need to hear everything." Over the next 20 minutes, she told us her story. Her name was June Walcott. She was 17. She'd been walking home from the Starlight Theater after seeing a movie with friends when a man approached her outside Anderson's drugstore, silver hair, dressed like a priest, walking with a crutch. He seemed harmless. Asked if she could help retrieve his wallet from under his car seat. She'd said yes. When she bent down to look, he'd struck her from behind. "I woke up in his trunk," she said, her voice shaking. "He was driving. I was screaming, pounding on the lid, begging him to let me out. He kept driving for maybe an hour. And then he drove into water. The car went into a lake. The trunk started filling up. I thought I was drowning. Everything went black." She looked at us with terrified eyes. Next thing I knew, I was at the surface. I swam to shore and ran. I saw the lights of town and came here. I need to call my parents. They must be so worried. It was a horrifying story, but there were problems, big problems. "Miss Walcott," Chief Briggs said carefully, "what's your address?" "I live above my parents' store, Walcott's Hardware on Main Street." There was no Walcott's Hardware on Main Street. There hadn't been for decades. "What movie did you see tonight?" Leo asked. "The new Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis picture, Living It Up. It just opened." I felt ice in my veins. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis hadn't made a movie together since the 50s. Chief Briggs walked to the calendar on the wall. "June," he said quietly. "What year is it?" She looked at him like he was crazy. 1961. Why? "June," the chief said, his voice gentle. "It's not 1961. It's 2024. That was 63 years ago." The look on her face was pure incomprehension, then confusion, then mounting horror. She stood and looked around the station, really looked at it. At the computers, at the digital clock, at the modern equipment. She went to the window and stared out at the parking lot, at the cars with their modern designs. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." She stumbled toward us. "I think I'm going to be sick. Where's the bathroom?" Leo guided her down the hall. Chief Briggs and I stood there, neither speaking. What could we say? "You remember Martha Kellerman?" the chief said quietly. I nodded. How could I forget? That empty closet, those bloody finger trails? "Something's happening in this town," he continued. "Something we don't understand." Before I could respond, Leo came running back, his face white. "She's gone." "What?" I was standing right outside the bathroom door. I heard the water running, then nothing. I knocked, no answer. I opened the door and she's just gone. We rushed to the bathroom. All 3 stalls empty, the sink still wet where she'd splashed water on her face. No sign of June Walcott. There was a small window above the sink. I checked it. Unlocked, barely big enough for someone thin to squeeze through. We ran outside to where the bathroom window faced. The window was about 10 feet up, no footprints in the grass below, no disturbance, no sign of her anywhere. She climbed out and ran, Leo said, but his voice was uncertain. None of us believed it. Chief Briggs filed a report anyway. We gave the state police June's description, her story about the man who'd abducted her. They said they'd look into it, but I could hear the skepticism in their voices. But I couldn't let it go. Over the next few days, I started researching. Old newspapers, town records, historical archives, and I found it. June Walcott, 17 years old, disappeared June 15th, 1961. Last seen leaving the Starlight Theater. She'd told friends she was stopping at Anderson's drugstore for a milkshake. She never made it home. The description matched. Dark hair, thin build, 5'4", blue dress, white flat shoes, the same dress and shoes the girl in our station had been wearing. The investigation in 1961 had gone nowhere. No witnesses, no leads. The FBI had been tracking a serial killer who posed as a priest and abducted young women across 6 states, but they'd never connected him to June's disappearance. I showed my research to Chief Briggs and Leo. We sat in the station late one night, going through it all. "So what are you saying?" Leo asked. "We saw a ghost?" "I don't know what we saw, but that girl knew things she shouldn't have known. The Starlight closed in '78. Anderson's drugstore hasn't existed since the '80s. Chief Briggs stared at the old newspaper article. "You know what bothers me? She was wet. Soaking wet." We all thought about that. About June's story. About the trunk. About the car going into a lake. "Crystal Lake," I said. 10 miles north, deep water. If someone drove a car into it in 1961, it could still be down there," Chief Briggs finished. The next day, the chief made calls. He contacted the county sheriff, said we had reason to believe there might be evidence related to a cold case at the bottom of Crystal Lake. It took 2 weeks to organize. Dive team. Sonar equipment. The press got wind of it and news crews from Denver showed up. I was there the day they found it. The sonar picked up something metallic in one of the deeper sections, about 170 feet down. When the divers surfaced, the lead diver was shaking his head in disbelief. "It's a car. Old one. Late 50s, early 60s. Been down there a long time." They brought in a crane. It took most of the day to rig the cables and winch it up. When it finally broke the surface, covered in mud and algae, I felt my blood freeze. A 1960 Chevrolet Impala, dark blue under the grime, shattered windows, and an Oklahoma license plate barely visible through the mud. They pulled it onto shore. We could see the skeletal remains in the driver's seat immediately. Adult male. Forensics would later confirm he'd drowned, trapped in the car as it sank. But it was what they found in the trunk that made everyone go silent. A second skeleton. Smaller, female, approximately 17 years old. June Walcott. She'd never escaped that trunk. She'd drowned in it 63 years ago, her fingernails worn to nothing from clawing at the locked lid. The FBI identified the driver from dental records. Robert Morrison, a drifter who'd posed as a priest. They'd been looking for him since 1959 in connection with at least 8 murdered women across 6 states. The story made national news. Cold case solved after 63 years. The town held a funeral for June. Her surviving relatives, cousins who'd never met her, finally had closure. But I had no closure. Neither did Leo or Chief Briggs, because we knew something no one else did. 3 nights before that car was pulled from the lake, June Walcott had walked into our station, dripping wet, telling us about her abduction, about the man who'd thrown her in his trunk, about the car going into water, about everything that had happened to her on June 15th, 1961. Part 3. The Pattern. For weeks after they found the car, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw June standing in our station, water dripping from her hair. I saw those bloody finger trails in Martha's motel room, 2 women, 2 disappearances, 2 impossible events. Leo and I talked about it constantly on patrol, driving the dark mountain roads. "You think they're connected?" Leo asked one night. "They both disappeared from locked rooms in impossible ways," I said, "and they both had encounters with something that came from confined spaces. Martha's closets, June's trunk." "Dark spaces," Leo said. "Dark, enclosed spaces. Closets, trunks, places where things hide." We drove in silence, both scared to say what we were thinking. A week later, Chief Briggs called me into his office. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. His face was pale, new lines around his eyes. "I need to show you something." On his desk was a stack of old file folders, yellowed paper, ancient typewriter text. "I've been going through old case files," he said, "from before my time. I wanted to see if there were other unexplained cases in this town's history." He opened the first folder. 1923. A farmer's wife disappeared. He woke up one morning and she was gone. No sign she'd left the house, but they found bloody handprints on the inside of the root cellar door, like she'd been trying to get out. He pulled out another. 1947. A teenage boy vanished from his locked bedroom. Parents heard him screaming, broke down the door, found the room empty, except for claw marks inside the closet. Another file. 1968. A librarian disappeared from the town library after closing. They found her shoes and glasses by the storage closet. The closet was locked. When they opened it, scratch marks covered the inside of the door. He kept pulling files. 1981, 1992, 2003. All the same, people vanishing from locked rooms, claw marks, scratch marks, signs of desperate struggles near closets, storage rooms, basements, dark, confined spaces. "How many?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. 14. 14 unexplained disappearances over the last 100 years, all following the same pattern. I stared at the files. Why didn't anyone notice before? They happened years apart, different police chiefs, different eras. Nobody connected them until now. "What do we do?" Chief Briggs rubbed his eyes. "I don't know. We can't tell people there's something that hides in dark spaces and takes people. They'll think we're insane." "Like we were supposed to help Martha?" I said bitterly. The words hung between us. We'd failed her. "I've been thinking about what Martha told us," the chief said. "About the thing in her closets, the voice using her husband's words, the skull with red eyes." "What about it?" "Every culture has stories about something like that. A trickster, a deceiver, something that preys on the vulnerable and lonely. Something that promises what they want most, then takes them." "You think it's the devil?" "I think it's something old, something that's been here longer than this town, and I think it's patient. It waits for the right victim, someone isolated, vulnerable, someone who won't be missed right away." I thought about Martha, alone for 7 years. No family, no friends. I thought about June, walking home alone in 1961. They were both alone when it took them. Chief Briggs nodded. "That's when it strikes. When there's no one to help, no one to hear them scream." Over the following months, I became obsessed with the files. I tracked down surviving family members of the victims, careful about what I asked. The conversations were disturbing. Thomas Brennan's wife had claimed something was living in their root cellar, that she could hear it moving at night. Peter Shaw had complained about scratching in his closet for weeks before vanishing. Dorothy Pine said she felt watched whenever she went into the library storage room. The pattern was consistent. Scratching sounds, feelings of being watched, paranoia increasing over time. Then, when the victims were most vulnerable and isolated, they vanished. It was Leo who made the final connection. We were on patrol when he suddenly pulled over. "The closets," he said. "Martha's closets, the storage room, Peter Shaw's closet, June's trunk. They're all the same." "How?" "They're dark enclosed spaces, but they're also liminal spaces, thresholds, places between here and there. Closets connect inside to outside through walls. Trunks are between the car and the road. Storage rooms between public and private space. I felt chills. So this thing exists in the in-between? Maybe that's where it comes from. The spaces between spaces, the darkness between light. When it finds a threshold it can use, it reaches through. It touches our world. It sounded insane, but it made terrible sense. Then how do we stop it? How do we protect people? Neither of us had an answer. That was 3 years ago. Since then, no new disappearances, no scratching in closets, no voices in the dark. It's been quiet, but I don't trust the quiet. Part 4. The investigation. After Leo made that connection about liminal spaces, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The idea consumed me. I started spending my off hours at the town library, digging through old newspapers and records that hadn't been digitized yet. Microfiche from the 1920s, handwritten town council meeting notes from the 1800s, cemetery records, church records, anything that might give me insight into what was happening in our town. What I found made everything worse. The disappearances went back further than Chief Briggs had discovered. Much further. In 1889, a mine foreman named Jacob Reeves vanished from the equipment shed at the Silver Creek mine. The shed was locked from inside. When the other miners broke in, they found his lunch pail and his boots, but no sign of Jacob. The inside of the shed door was covered in scratch marks, like he'd been trying to claw his way out. In 1867, a homesteader's daughter named Sarah Clemens disappeared from the family's storm cellar during a tornado. Her mother had sent her down there for safety, then followed minutes later. The cellar was empty. Sarah's screams could be heard for hours afterwards, but they seemed to come from deep underground, from places the family could never reach no matter how much they dug. In 1852, before there was even a proper town here, a fur trapper named Antoine Mercier wrote in his journal about the Devil's Closet. In the wilderness, he described a small cave he'd found where the darkness seemed to have weight, seemed to press against him. He heard voices in that darkness, his wife's voice, calling to him, even though his wife had died 3 years prior in Quebec. The journal entries stopped abruptly after that. Mercier was never seen again. I made a timeline, plotted every disappearance I could find on a large map of the area, and I started to see a pattern that made my hands shake. The disappearances weren't random. They clustered around certain locations. Martha's house sat on land that had once been part of the Silver Creek mine property. The Pinecrest Motel was built on the site of the old Clemens homestead. The library, where Dorothy Pine had vanished in 1968, had been constructed over a network of old root cellars from the 1880s. Every single disappearance over the last 170 years had occurred within a half-mile radius of those old underground spaces. The mine tunnels, the root cellars, the storm shelters, the natural caves. It was like the thing that took people at established territory, claimed certain areas, and once you were in its territory, if you were alone and vulnerable near a threshold space, it could reach you. I showed my research to Leo one night. We were sitting in the station, third shift, the only 2 people in the building. I spread out the maps and timelines across the desk. "Look at this," I said, pointing to the clusters. "It's not hunting randomly. It has a range, a territory." Leo studied the maps, his face growing more troubled. "So what you're saying is, we've got some kind of entity that lives in the dark spaces under our town, and it's been feeding on people for almost 200 years. "I think it was here before the town," I said. "I think it's always been here. The Native Americans who lived here before white settlers arrived, they had legends about this area. I found references in some old anthropology texts. They called it the place where the earth opens its mouth. They avoided it. Then why the hell did anyone build a town here?" "Because nobody listened to Native American warnings in the 1850s, I said bitterly. "The silver in the mountains was too tempting. And by the time people started disappearing, the town was already established. People convinced themselves it was accidents, cave-ins, people getting lost, anything but the truth. Leo was quiet for a long time, staring at the maps. So, what do we do with this information? We still can't tell anyone. They'll think we've lost our minds. I know, but we can be vigilant. We can watch for the warning signs. When someone starts reporting scratching sounds or feeling watched or hearing voices, we take it seriously. We don't wait until it's too late like we did with Martha. And then what? Even if we identify potential victims, how do we protect them? We can't tell them not to go in their own closets. He had a point. What were we supposed to say? Ma'am, we have reason to believe an interdimensional entity is stalking you through your closet. Please don't go in there. But then I had an idea. A terrible, dangerous idea. What if we could communicate with it? I said. Leo looked at me like I'd suggested we juggled chainsaws. Are you out of your mind? Hear me out. Martha said it talked to her, used her husband's voice. It's intelligent. It understands human language. What if we could negotiate with it? Negotiate what? Hey, Mr. Monster, could you please stop eating our citizens? I'm serious, Leo. What if there's something it wants, something we could give it in exchange for leaving people alone? Like what? A sacrifice? You want to start throwing virgins into closets to appease the darkness monster? I knew it sounded insane, but I was desperate. I'd been having nightmares about Martha, about June, about all the people who'd been taken over the centuries. I needed to do something, anything, to stop it from happening again. That's when things took an unexpected turn. The next day, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a woman's voice said, "Deputy Harrison? My name is Dr. Evelyn Cross. I'm a professor of folklore and anthropology at the University of Colorado. I heard about the discovery of the car in Crystal Lake, and I've been following the case. I think we need to talk." We met at a coffee shop in town the next afternoon. Dr. Cross was in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and sharp, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She carried a leather satchel that looked older than she was. "I've been studying disappearances in small Colorado mountain towns for 30 years, she told me as we sat down. "There are patterns, similar patterns in about a dozen towns scattered through the Rockies. People vanishing from locked rooms, scratch marks on closet doors, witnesses reporting voices or apparitions before the disappearances." I felt my pulse quicken. "You're saying this isn't unique to our town?" "Not at all. Whatever this phenomenon is, it exists in multiple locations, always in old mining towns or areas where there was significant underground excavation. I think the mining operations in the 1800s disturbed something, opened pathways to somewhere else." "Somewhere else?" She opened her satchel and pulled out several old journals and notebooks. "I've interviewed dozens of people over the years who claim to have encountered what they describe as the thing in the dark. People who heard the scratching but got away before it could take them. People who saw something reaching out of mirrors or closets. Their descriptions are remarkably consistent." She opened one of the journals. "Black robes or formless darkness. A skull or skeletal face, sometimes with horns. Red eyes, clawed hands, a voice that mimics loved ones. And always, always, it appears in enclosed dark spaces, closets, basements, mine shafts, trunks, anywhere there's darkness and confinement." "What is it?" I asked. "What does it want?" Dr. Cross closed the journal, her expression grim. "I don't know what it is. My best guess, based on historical accounts and cross-cultural comparison, is that it's some kind of predatory entity that exists in a liminal dimension, somewhere between our world and something else. As for what it wants, that's simpler. It feeds on fear and suffering. The scratching, the voices, the psychological torture before the actual abduction, that's all part of how it feeds. The final taking is just the culmination. Can it be stopped? I don't know. In some towns, the disappearances seem to stop for decades, then start up again. In others, they continue at a steady rate. There are a few places where the disappearances stopped completely, but I haven't been able to determine why. I need to know everything you know, I said. Every case, every witness account, every theory. People in my town are in danger. Dr. Cross nodded. I was hoping you'd say that, because I think your town might be the key to understanding this. The concentration of disappearances here is higher than anywhere else I've studied. Whatever this thing is, it's strongest here. And if we can figure out how to stop it here, we might be able to save people in other towns too. Over the next several weeks, Dr. Cross and I worked together. She gave me access to all her research, decades of compiled data on similar disappearances across Colorado and neighboring states. I gave her access to our case files and the historical records I'd uncovered. We discovered something chilling. The disappearances followed a cycle. In our town, they happened in clusters. Several disappearances over a few years, then a long quiet period, then another cluster. The pattern repeated roughly every 30 to 40 years. It's like it needs time to recharge, Dr. Cross theorized. Each taking requires enormous energy. After a cluster of disappearances, it goes dormant, waits, builds strength. Then it becomes active again. When was the last cluster before Martha? I asked, though I was afraid I already knew the answer. Dr. Cross checked her notes. 1992 through 1995, 3 disappearances. Before that, 1958 through 1963, 5 disappearances. Before that, 1961, I interrupted. June Walcott was taken in 1961. Right in the middle of that cluster, Dr. Cross confirmed. But here's what concerns me. Based on the pattern, we shouldn't have had another active period until the late 2020s. Martha's disappearance in 2024 is right on schedule. But if the entity is following its historical pattern, it won't stop with Martha. There will be more. The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. How many more? I asked. Historically? Between 3 and 5 victims per cluster. Sometimes over several years, sometimes all within months. I felt sick. Martha had been the first, which meant somewhere in our town, 2 to 4 more people were being marked, being stalked, hearing scratching in their closets. We have to warn people, I said. How? What exactly would we tell them? Don't go in your closet? Don't be alone? They'll think you're insane. She was right, but I couldn't just sit back and wait for more people to disappear. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. Part 5. The Descent. I went back to Martha's house. I know it was stupid, reckless, but I needed to understand. I needed to see the place where it had all started, to look for clues we might have missed the first time. I didn't tell Leo or Chief Briggs where I was going. I went alone late at night, carrying a flashlight and my service weapon and a small video camera I'd borrowed from the evidence room. If I was going to do this, I wanted documentation. The house looked worse than I remembered. 3 years of abandonment had taken their toll. Paint peeling, weeds overgrown, windows dark and hollow like empty eye sockets. I used Martha's key, the one we'd kept as evidence, to let myself in. The door creaked open, and I was hit with the smell of rot and mildew. The house had been sealed up for years, nothing disturbed since the state police had finished their investigation. I turned on my flashlight and the camera, sweeping both across the interior. The living room was exactly as we'd left it. Martha's pillow and blankets still on the couch, the coffee table still cluttered with her Bible and rosary. I moved through the house slowly, documenting everything. The shattered mirrors, the nailed closet doors, the shotgun blast hole in the upstairs hallway closet. When I reached that closet, I stopped. The door was still nailed shut, just as Martha had left it. I could see the hole she'd blasted through it, about chest height. The edges were splintered and rough. I knelt down and looked through the hole, shining my flashlight into the darkness beyond. The closet was empty. Just bare walls and a few wire hangers on the rod. Nothing to explain Martha's terror, nothing to explain what had happened. But as I stared into that darkness, I felt something. A change in the air pressure, a sense of weight, like something was pressing against the other side of reality, trying to push through. And I heard it. Scratching. Soft at first, so soft I almost thought I was imagining it, but it grew louder, more insistent. The sound of fingernails against wood coming from inside the closet. From inside the sealed, empty closet. My rational mind screamed at me to run, to get out of that house and never come back. But I needed to understand. I needed to see. I stood up and examined the nails holding the door shut. They were old now, rusted. I could probably pry them out with the crowbar I'd brought from my trunk. The scratching continued, steady, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. I went to my car and got the crowbar. Came back upstairs, started working on the nails. This is insane, I muttered to myself as I pried out the first nail. This is absolutely insane. But I kept going, one nail after another. The scratching grew louder with each nail I removed, like whatever was in there knew I was opening the door, like it was excited. When I'd removed the last nail, I stood there with my hand on the doorknob, breathing hard. The scratching had stopped. The house was silent. Even the usual sounds of an old house settling seemed to have ceased. It was waiting for me to open the door. Every instinct I had screamed not to do it. I thought about Martha's warning, about the red eyes she'd seen, about the thing that had taken her. But I also thought about all the people who had disappeared over the last 170 years, all the families who'd never gotten answers, all the victims who died alone and terrified. If I could see it, document it, maybe I could find a way to stop it. I turned the doorknob and pulled the door open. For a moment, there was nothing, just an empty closet, exactly as I'd seen it through the hole. Wire hangers, bare walls, darkness. Then, the darkness moved. I don't mean shadows shifting. I mean the darkness itself moved, like it was alive, like it had substance and intention. It rolled forward out of the closet like thick smoke, except it was blacker than any smoke I'd ever seen. So black it seemed to absorb the light from my flashlight. And in that darkness, 2 points of red light appeared. Eyes, burning like coals, fixed on me with an intelligence that was utterly inhuman. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering. The darkness continued to pour out of the closet, spreading across the floor, climbing the walls. And then it began to take shape. A tall figure in black robes, a hood obscuring most of its face. But I could see what was underneath the hood, what Martha had described. A skull, not quite human. The eye sockets too large, the jaw too long. And yes, horns. Small curving horns protruding from the temples. Those red eyes fixed on me. And I heard a voice. Not out loud. Inside my head. A voice that was layered, multiple tones speaking at once, like a chorus of whispers. You opened the door. I raised my gun with shaking hands. Stay back. I'm warning you. The thing laughed. The sound echoed in my skull, making my teeth ache. Your weapon cannot harm me, child of dust. I am older than your mountains. I was here before your kind learned to walk upright. I will be here when your species is dust and memory. What are you? I managed to ask, though my voice came out as barely a whisper. I am the space between spaces, the darkness that existed before light, the hunger that never sleeps. I am the threshold, the doorway, the passage. I am what waits in the dark for the lost and the lonely. It moved closer, gliding across the floor without walking. The darkness that composed it seemed to ripple and shift, never quite solid, never quite smoke. Martha Kellerman, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. June Walcott. All the others. Where are they? What did you do to them? They are with me. They are part of me now. Their fear sustains me. Their suffering nourishes me. They exist in the spaces between, forever falling, forever screaming, forever alone. I felt rage cut through my terror. You're a monster. I am nature. I am inevitability. You build your fragile shells of wood and stone, and you think you are safe. You hide from the darkness with your electric lights and your locked doors. But I am always there, waiting in the spaces you forget. The closet, the basement, the trunk, the gap beneath your bed. And when you are weak, when you are vulnerable, when you are alone, I hum at what is mine. We'll stop you, I said. We'll find a way. The thing laughed again, and this time I felt it in my bones, a cold that seemed to seep into my marrow. You cannot stop what has always been. You cannot kill what was never alive. You cannot lock out what lives in the locks themselves. It raised one arm, and I saw its hand. Long fingers ending in talons, not quite bone, not quite shadow, something in between. But I am curious about you, Deputy Harrison. You opened the door. You came to me willingly. That is rare. Most of my prey try to hide, try to run, but not you. You want to understand. You want to fight. Yes, I said, though my whole body was shaking now. Then I will give you a gift, a truth, knowledge that may save you or may drive you mad. The red eyes seemed to burn brighter. I am bound by rules, as all old things are. I cannot take those who are not alone. I cannot touch those who do not open the door. I cannot enter the light. These are the laws of my existence, written when the world was young. But know this, I am patient. I can wait. I can whisper. I can promise. I can deceive. And eventually, everyone is alone. Eventually, everyone opens the door. It began to recede, flowing backward into the closet. I have marked 3 more in your town. I can smell their isolation, taste their fear. They will be mine before the year ends. You cannot save them. You cannot even warn them without sounding mad. All you can do is watch and wonder and wait for the day when you too are alone in the dark. Wait, I shouted. But it was already gone. The darkness pulled back into the closet like water down a drain. The red eyes were the last thing to disappear, burning in my vision even after they'd vanished. I stood there in Martha's hallway, gasping for breath, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The video camera had fallen from my hands at some point. I picked it up with trembling fingers and rewound it, desperate to see proof of what I'd just witnessed. The footage showed me entering the house, moving through the rooms, reaching the closet, prying out the nails, then static. The entire encounter with the entity was just static and white noise. When the footage cleared again, it showed me standing frozen in the hallway, staring at nothing for nearly 15 minutes. No darkness, no figure in robes, no red eyes, no proof. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. Instead, I grabbed my equipment and ran out of that house, drove straight back to town, my hands still shaking on the wheel. When I got home, I sat in my driveway for an hour, trying to process what had happened, trying to convince myself it had been real, that I wasn't losing my mind like Martha had. But I knew it was real, because the thing had told me something important, something I could use. It was bound by rules. It couldn't take people who weren't alone. It couldn't touch those who didn't open the door. It couldn't enter the light. And it had marked 3 more people in town. I had to find them. I had to warn them, rules or no rules, sanity or no sanity. Because if I didn't, they would die. They would be pulled into that darkness and exist there forever, screaming, suffering, feeding that ancient hunger. I called Dr. Cross first thing in the morning, told her everything, even though I knew how it sounded. To my surprise, she didn't question my sanity. "You actually saw it," she said, her voice tight with a mix of fear and excitement. "Deputy Harrison, in 30 years of research, I've never found anyone who's seen it directly and lived to tell about it. Everyone who's encountered it face to face has vanished." "It said it was curious about me," I told her, "because I came willingly, because I opened the door." "That might have saved your life. You weren't afraid enough. Fear is what it feeds on. Maybe without that fear, you weren't appetizing." It told me it's marked 3 more people. It said, I can't save them. "But now we know its rules," DeCross said. "Can't take people who aren't alone. Can't touch those who don't open the door. Can't enter the light." That gives us something to work with. How do we find the marked people? If the pattern holds from other towns, they'll start showing symptoms, scratching sounds, feelings of being watched, paranoia. We need to monitor police calls, hospital visits, anything that might indicate someone is being stalked. Over the next 2 months, Dr. Cross and I worked together, monitoring everything. I convinced Chief Briggs to flag any calls about unusual noises or paranoia for immediate follow-up. I didn't tell him why, just that I had a hunch about preventing future incidents. The first call came in mid-September. A man named Richard Torres, 47, living alone in a small apartment downtown. He'd called to report hearing scratching sounds in his walls at night. When Leo and I went to investigate, we found a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles under bloodshot eyes, hands trembling when he lit a cigarette. "It's in the walls," he kept saying. "Every night, scratching, like fingernails on wood. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I just hear it scratching." We searched his apartment thoroughly. No signs of mice or rats, no obvious explanation for the sounds. "Mr. Torres," I said carefully, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. What you're experiencing is real. You're not crazy, but you're in danger." He looked at me with desperate, hopeful eyes. "You believe me?" "I believe you. And I need you to do exactly what I tell you if you want to survive. First, never be alone if you can help it. Stay with friends, family, anyone. Second, don't open any closet doors or check any dark enclosed spaces when you're by yourself. Third, keep lights on at all times, even when you sleep, especially when you sleep. Can you do that?" What's going on? What's after me? Something old, something dangerous. But it has rules. It can't hurt you if you follow what I just told you. Do you understand? He nodded slowly, still confused, but willing to trust me. "I'm going to give you my cell number," I continued. "If you hear the scratching again, if you see anything unusual, if you even feel scared, you call me immediately, day or night. Understand?" Okay, I'll do that." Leo and I left, and he immediately turned to me. "What the hell was that? You just told a civilian there's a monster after him." "Because there is. And you know this how?" I told him about going to Martha's house, about what I'd seen, about the rules the entity had revealed. Leo was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "You actually saw it?" "Yes." "And it told you it's marked 3 people?" "Yes." Leo was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "You actually saw it?" "Yes." "And it told you it's marked 3 people?" "Yes." "Then we need to find the other 2. The second call came 3 weeks later. Melissa Hoffman, 34, divorced, living alone in a rental house on the east side of town. She'd called 911 at 2 in the morning, hysterical, claiming someone was in her basement calling her name. Leo and I responded. When we arrived, Melissa was standing on her front porch in her bathrobe, crying, refusing to go back inside. "It sounded like my mother," she sobbed. But my mother's been dead for 5 years. She was calling me from the basement, asking me to come down, saying she missed me. But I know my mother is dead. I know it wasn't her. But it sounded exactly like her. I felt ice in my veins, the same pattern as Martha, using the voice of a dead loved one to lure the victim to a dark, enclosed space. I gave Melissa the same instructions I'd given Richard. Never be alone. Don't open doors to dark spaces. Keep the lights on. Call me if anything else happens. She looked at me with terrified, grateful eyes. Thank you for believing me. My ex-husband thought I was crazy. That's part of why we divorced. But you believe me. I believe you. And we're going to keep you safe. 2 down, 1 more to find. But the third person found us. It was late October when she walked into the station. A teenage girl, maybe 16, with stringy blonde hair and a haunted look in her eyes. She approached the front desk where Leo and I were doing paperwork. I need help, she said quietly. There's something wrong with my bedroom closet. Her name was Emma Calloway. She lived with her single father on the outskirts of town. He worked night shifts at the warehouse, leaving Emma alone in the house most nights. The scratching started a month ago, she told us. At first I thought it was a mouse, but then it started talking to me, using my mom's voice. My mom left when I was 8. I don't even remember what she sounds like, but somehow I know it's supposed to be her voice. 3 for 3. The entity had marked them all. I gathered Richard, Melissa, and Emma together at the station 2 days later. Dr. Cross came up from Boulder for the meeting. The 5 of us sat in the conference room, and I told them everything. About Martha Kellerman, about June Walcott, about the 170 years of disappearances, about what I'd seen in Martha's house. They listened in horrified silence. When I finished, Melissa was crying. Richard looked like he might be sick. Emma just stared at me with those haunted eyes. So, we're all going to die? Richard asked. No, I said firmly, because now we know the rules, and we're not going to let you be alone. We're going to set up a buddy system. You're going to stay together, stay in the light. Don't open any doors to dark spaces unless someone else is with you. The entity can only take you if you're alone and you open the door. For how long? Melissa asked. How long do we have to live like this? Dr. Cross spoke up. Based on the historical pattern, the active hunting period lasts between 6 months and 2 years. After Martha disappeared in March 2024, we're now 7 months in. If you can survive another year to year and a half, it should go dormant again. A year and a half of never being alone? Emma said. That's impossible. It's better than the alternative, I told her. We set up a rotation. Richard, Melissa, and Emma would stay together at Melissa's house, which was the largest. I arranged for different officers to check on them every few hours during the night. Dr. Cross stayed in town, helping coordinate everything. For 3 weeks, it worked. No incidents, no scratching. The entity seemed frustrated that its chosen prey were no longer isolated. Then Emma's father had a heart attack. It happened on a Friday night. Emma was at the hospital with him, and he died around midnight. She was devastated, crying in the hospital waiting room. Richard and Melissa were with her, trying to comfort her. I got the call around 1 a.m. and drove to the hospital immediately. When I arrived, I found Richard and Melissa in the waiting room, but no Emma. Where is she? I demanded. She said she needed to use the bathroom, Melissa said. She's been in there for like 20 minutes. We were giving her privacy. She just lost her dad. I ran to the women's restroom and pounded on the door. Emma, answer me. Nothing. I kicked the door open. The bathroom was empty. All the stalls standing open. But the janitor's closet in the corner had its door slightly ajar. No. I ran to the closet and yanked it open. Mops, buckets, cleaning supplies, and in the back corner, barely visible in the dim light, scratch marks on the wall. Fresh ones, and a single white sneaker on the floor. Emma's sneaker. I'd failed. Despite everything I knew, despite all our precautions, the entity had gotten her. Emma had been alone in the bathroom, grieving, vulnerable, and she'd heard something in the janitor's closet. Maybe her father's voice, promising her one last goodbye. Maybe her mother's voice, the mother who'd abandoned her, finally coming back. Whatever it was, she'd opened the door, and it had taken her. The hospital called the police. A missing person report was filed. Search dogs were brought in, but I knew they wouldn't find anything. Emma Calloway was gone, pulled into the dark spaces between, just like Martha and June and all the others. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot and wept. I'd known the rules. I'd tried so hard to protect her, but it hadn't been enough. Dr. Cross found me there an hour later. She got in the passenger seat and we sat in silence for a while. "You saved 2 of them," she said finally. "Richard and Melissa are alive because of you. That's more than anyone has ever managed before." "But not Emma." "No, not Emma." We sat there watching the sun come up over the mountains. "It's going to go dormant now," Dr. Cross said. 3 victims in this cycle. Martha, Emma, and historically, there should have been one more we didn't identify in time. Maybe someone who didn't report the symptoms. Maybe someone who died in a way that looked like an accident. But the cycle is complete. It'll rest now, for 30 or 40 years. And then it'll wake up again, I said. And 3 or 4 more people will die. Unless we find a way to stop it permanently. I looked at her. "You think that's possible?" "I don't know. But I'm going to keep researching, keep looking for answers. And you're going to keep those files, keep the documentation, so that whoever has your job 30 years from now will know what they're dealing with." That was 3 years ago. Richard Torres and Melissa Hoffman are still alive. They actually ended up getting married, bonding over their shared trauma. They moved to California last year, wanting to get as far from this town as possible. I don't blame them. Chief Briggs retired and gave me his files on the old cases. I've added my own documentation. Everything about Martha, June, and Emma. Everything I learned from Dr. Cross. Everything the entity told me in Martha's house. It's all locked in my desk at home, waiting for the next cycle. Waiting for the next person who'll need to understand what's happening when the scratching starts, because I know it will happen again. 30, 40 years from now, someone else will hear fingernails against wood in the darkness. Someone else will see red eyes watching from their closet. Someone else will hear the voice of a dead loved one calling to them from the shadows. And I hope, I pray, that whoever is wearing this badge will find my files, will read this account, will understand the rules, and have a better chance than I did at protecting the next victims. Epilogue. I still drive past Martha's house sometimes on night patrol. It sits empty, rotting slowly, windows like dead eyes staring out at the road. The closet door upstairs is probably hanging open, the nails I removed still scattered on the floor where I dropped them. Sometimes I think I see movement in those windows, a flicker of darkness slightly darker than the rest, red pinpoints of light watching me drive past. The entity is sleeping now, digesting its victims, resting in the spaces between spaces. But it's always there, always waiting. I keep my own closet doors open at home, keep lights on in every room. I've gotten used to sleeping with the lamp on. It's a small price to pay. Dr. Cross still calls me every few months with updates on her research. She's found similar entities in other places. Different manifestations, different rules, but the same basic pattern. Ancient things that live in the dark spaces, feeding on fear and suffering. She thinks they might all be connected somehow. Different aspects of the same phenomenon. The darkness that existed before light, before time, before the universe as we know it. The space between atoms. The void between stars. The nothing that contains everything. I don't know if that's true. I just know that what I saw in Martha's house was real. That it's taken people I tried to protect. That it will wake up again someday and the cycle will continue. I've been a small-town cop for 13 years now. I've seen things that don't make sense, that shouldn't be possible. I've talked to ghosts and bargained with monsters. I've failed to save people and succeeded in saving others. And I know that when my time comes, when I'm old and alone and vulnerable, the entity will remember me. Will remember the cop who opened the door willingly, who looked into its red eyes and didn't quite have enough fear to be appetizing. Maybe it will come for me then. Maybe it will give me a choice. Join the others in the eternal darkness, or pass on my knowledge and let the cycle continue. I don't know what I'll choose. I don't know if I'll have a choice at all. But I know this. The darkness is patient. It's always been there, waiting in the spaces we forget. The closet, the basement, the trunk, the gap beneath your bed. And someday, when you're alone and scared and vulnerable, you might hear it scratching. You might hear a familiar voice calling from the darkness, promising comfort, or answers or reunion. And you'll face a choice: open the door, or live with the not knowing. Whatever you choose, remember what I've told you. Remember Martha Kellerman, who fought so hard before the darkness took her. Remember June Walcott, who drowned in 1961 but came back one night to tell her story. Remember Emma Calloway, a 16-year-old girl who just wanted to say goodbye to her father. Remember that some doors should never be opened. Remember that the darkness is always hungry. And remember that I tried to warn you. I've been a small-town cop for 13 years. One case still scares me. It scares me because I know it's not really over. It will never be over. The entity sleeps, but it does not die. The cycle pauses, but it does not end. The darkness waits, and it has all the time in the world. And somewhere in this town, right now, there are closets and basements and dark enclosed spaces where reality is thin, where something ancient and hungry presses against the barriers between worlds, waiting for its next chance to feed. You can lock your doors, you can turn on all your lights, you can refuse to be alone. But eventually, everyone is alone. Eventually, everyone opens the door. And when you do, the darkness will be waiting. It's always waiting. In the spaces between spaces, in the silence between heartbeats, in the shadow just beyond your vision, always watching, always hungry, always there. I drive past Martha's house one last time tonight, and I swear I see it. A tall figure in black robes standing in the upstairs window. Two red eyes burning in the darkness, watching my patrol car pass. I blink, and it's gone. But I know what I saw, and I know it saw me too. The entity remembers. It's always remembering, collecting names and faces and fears for the day it wakes again. And when that day comes, when the scratching starts again and the voices echo from dark places, I'll be ready. Or I'll be another name in the files. Another victim pulled into the darkness. Another voice calling from the void, trying to lure the next person to open the door. Either way, the story will continue, because the darkness is eternal, and it's always hungry. Always. The end. Because I know it's still out there, waiting in the dark spaces, in closets and basements and trunks, in all those liminal places where light doesn't reach. Sometimes on night patrol I drive past Martha's old house. It's been abandoned since she disappeared. No one will buy it. It just sits there, empty and dark. And sometimes I think I see a light in the upstairs window, a red light, like eyes watching from darkness. I keep Chief Briggs's files locked in my desk now. He retired last year, said he was too old for this. Martinez is the new chief. Good cop, practical. I haven't told him about the files, but I've made copies. The old cases, my notes, the research on June, all of it, because I know someday it will happen again. Someone will disappear from a locked room. Someone will report scratching in their closet. Someone will see red eyes in the darkness. And whoever wears this badge will need to know the truth. There's something in this town. Something old and patient and hungry. Something that hides in the spaces between spaces, waiting for the vulnerable and alone. We call them closets and basements and trunks. Safe, mundane names. But they're not safe. They're doorways, thresholds. And something on the other side is always watching, always waiting. I've been a cop in this town for 13 years. I've seen things I can't explain. But I know one thing for certain. When you're alone at night and you hear scratching from your closet, don't open that door. Don't ever open that door. Because once you do, once you invite it in, there's no going back. Ask Martha Kellerman. Ask June Walcott. Ask any of the 14 who came before. Except you had, because they're gone. Pulled through dark thresholds into whatever exists on the other side. All that's left are scratch marks and bloody trails and empty rooms with open closet doors. I drive past Martha's house one more time tonight. The windows are dark, no red eyes. The house looks harmless in the moonlight, but I know better. I know what lives in the dark spaces, what scratches at closet doors when lights go out, what whispers promises in voices of the dead. And I know it will reach out again. It will find another victim, another lonely soul. And I won't be able to stop it. Because how do you fight something that exists in the spaces between? How do you protect people from darkness in their own homes? You can't. All you can do is remember, bear witness, make sure their stories aren't forgotten. That's why I'm writing this. So when it happens again, someone will understand. Someone will know. There's something in the dark spaces, and it's always hungry. As I drive away, I check my rearview mirror. For just a moment, I see a figure standing in the road behind me, tall and dark, wearing a hooded robe. I blink. It's gone. But I know it was there. I know it's always there, watching from shadows, waiting. I've been a small-town cop for 13 years, and there's one case that still scares me. It scares me because I know it's not over. It will never be over. Not until the day I'm alone in a locked room, hearing scratching from the closet, seeing red eyes in darkness. Not until I become another name in the files, another unsolved disappearance, another victim pulled into the dark spaces between. And when that day comes, I hope whoever finds this understands. I hope they learn. I hope they remember that some doors should never be opened. Because what waits on the other side isn't salvation or answers. It's just darkness. Hungry, patient, eternal darkness. Always watching. Always waiting. Always there in the spaces we think are empty, but aren't.